security is top of mind. I look forward to hearing more about how the administration's budget requests will help us achieve that goal. At the same time, the department's efforts to advance critical clean energy technologies from solar to nuclear energy and storage continue to transform the U.S. economy and reduce our greenhouse gas emissions. And you have some pretty historic new authorities and funding levels with which to do that. This committee's work product, the energy...
It's happening now. The Democrats may have to accept a huge benefit cut to the important programs in order to avoid an economic recession that's about to happen in just a couple of days. That's right, an economic recession is going to happen, and the time is ticking until when it happens. You want to be sure to get ready for this, because when the stimulus hits the bank, you better be sure to take that money out, save that money, and put it towards somewhere and something good. You definitely have to. You definitely want to. You don't want to waste time on this, because let's get straight into news. Joe Biden, Chuck Schumer are refusing to negotiate with Kevin. That's Kevin McCarthy on raising the nation's debt ceiling. They don't want to raise anything, but the voices across the political spectrum argue that the president and precedent for such talks has been sent already. The former president negotiated with the House Republican majority in 2011 to extend the nation's borrowing authority. That's right, extend the nation's borrowing authority. Nobody knows what that even means. And Obama agreed to negotiate big spending cuts with Republicans, everybody, before the 2012 election, because he knew he was ultimately responsible for the health of the economy. It would have taken a major hit if the Fed had defaulted on its debt obligations in 2011. Experts now say that Biden is now in a similar position as he readies his own re-election bid. He won't even be able to resist negotiations. The former Senate Budget Committee chairman has also told reporters failure to deal with his debt limit would be catastrophic to the economy, terrible to the economy, terrible to the world. Any serious person who has studied this knows that the economic consequences would be just disastrous. Conrad said he understands why Democrats refuse to negotiate with Republicans on raising debt limit during Obama's time, but he expects Joe Biden to do something and not act like Obama. So, here it is. Experts have said that Social Security and Medicare are headed for insolvency. And let's be honest, guys, it probably is. Social Security will probably end in a couple years, because experts have said that both Social Security is headed for insolvency. So there is an opportunity to do something about this, though. There's an opportunity to fix the problems that everybody's being bothered about. Now, let's get into the most important news first. Biden so far is not negotiating any tremendous pressure from his party to either enter negotiations, with the exception of Joe Manchin. Manchin, who is calling up for re-election, floated the idea of reconsidering reforms to prolong the solvency of federal programs like Medicare, Social Security, for Republicans to support, and for raising debt ceiling. He stated he would put bipartisan, bicameral committees together to look at each of one of the trusts and come up with solutions for how you fix it. Republican aides said refusing to negotiate with Republicans isn't something sustainable, isn't even something doable, because if you don't negotiate with both parties, you're pretty much acting stupid. Now, a senior Republican aide said that doing this would be a problem. Joe Manchin and Democrats' December's employment and inflation numbers were pretty good, and while we look at the various metrics of the economy, it doesn't appear that we're headed towards a recession. Not yet, at least. One source of fear is that the Fed is playing a dangerous game of raising the rates to lower inflation. It runs the risk of a recession. However, the most recent numbers indicate that the Fed may be able to pull a soft landing. Soft, easy landing to fix the problems, that is. Unemployment numbers were already down during this time. December, they fell to an even lower number, and the economy as a whole, well, fell again. Hourly job wages growth in December fell from 5 to 4%, and it's not spectacular news for workers, but it's something better than nothing. It shows that at least Joe Biden is trying to do something for the people. Now, besides that, I also want to say that even though Jerome Powell has acknowledged that there is no evidence that wage growth caused or even boosted inflation, probably it did, even though they don't want to admit it. It's just the facts, folks. Now, I also want to say this, folks, that there would decrease in wage growth. If it continues, it may encourage the Fed to slow their pace of rate hikes. When that happens, nasty stuff happens in Congress. Pretty much means that you ain't getting stimulus if Joe Biden doesn't stop this. He must stop the madness. He must increase more moves. He must increase more stimulus. He must do something quick before it's too late. We got a ton of news about the fourth stimulus check, the Social Security benefits, SI, SSDI, and even Social Security Administration news. We got a ton of news about the fourth stimulus check, fourth stimulus benefits that you probably should know, because if you don't know this, you're missing out on some important information.
David, great to see you.
Thanks for having me, Melissa.
Part of this is prompted by the House's downward revision of where they see the 10-year yield ending the year, which is now 3.25%. So can you walk us through how you get to the 16.5% PE that you landed at?
Yeah, sure. Happy to do that, Melissa. So, yeah, so over the last several years, there's been a pretty strong correlation between interest rates and valuation multiples in the market. And as we've seen this year, as interest rates have risen and risen quite dramatically, that's had a pretty detrimental impact on the valuation in the market. So it's really just taking on the higher interest rate expectations and what that means for valuations. Now, I would say though, Melissa, look, we've had a 24% decline in the markets, but I also think it's important to think about the long-term perspective here. Valuations for the market are now basically in line with the multi-decade averages, and it does suggest that investors should expect pretty healthy returns from here, 8 to 10% over the next 10 years. So, yeah, it's a very murky environment, but I think taking the longer-term perspective is exactly what you want to do in this kind of environment.
There are some who might argue, David, that estimates should come down further and that we haven't seen downward revisions or at least downward forecasts from companies yet, and that we will surely see that when the next earnings season rolls around. And I'm wondering how you start to think about that, because if 16.5, it's the 20-year average PE, it's roughly the 10-year as well. And this year does not seem to be an average year.
Economists look at a measure of inflation that ignores food and energy prices, and they call it core inflation. That's about the lowest amount in several years, several months. When you couple that with last week's booming jobs report of 528,000 jobs created last month and 3.5% unemployment, it underscores the kind of economy we've been building. We're seeing a stronger labor market where jobs are booming and Americans are working, and we're seeing some signs that inflation may be beginning to moderate. That's what happens when you build an economy from the low.
Though in an official statement, the lawmakers that support the bill have confirmed that the proposal is going to be different. Instead of federal level relief funds, it'll come from the state's general funds. According to state officials, individuals with a household income of $80,000 or less can apply for a one-time state tax exempt payment of up to $2,000 per household. With rising inflation and gas prices, the fourth round of federal level stimulus has been a big topic of discussion in the last few months. It was just last month when the Biden administration announced that it was considering two options as the official stimulus plan in response to rising gas prices. In May, Delaware began sending relief rebate payments of $300 to taxpayers who filed a return in 2020 due to a budget surplus. Most Delaware residents received these payments in May, and couples filing jointly can get $300 each. The state government is continuing to